In the mid-90s, I was on a trip in South America, and I found myself on a plane flying over Bolivia in the middle of the night. In the darkness, I looked out over the wing, and I saw the engine of the plane explode and burst into flames. My stomach turned because we immediately fell out of the sky. I wasn't the pilot, so there was nothing I could do. We lost cabin pressure, oxygen masks deployed, and all I could hear was people screaming and praying. And I was totally helpless. That was one of several trips that I took as a younger man to about 40 countries, and I was amazed at the wilderness and natural landscapes that I saw, but I also grew a bit overwhelmed at the ubiquitous smell of burning tropical rainforest and the squeaking and cracking sound of melting glaciers as you walk on them in the Alps, and also just the air and water pollution I saw in the Earth's major cities. Later, I got my academic training in environmental geography so I could devote my research and teaching to solving those problems that I had seen. Another big part of my life is health and fitness. I was a professional athlete. I've been vegan for several years, and I also have several years of training and work experience in alternative health. And it took me several years of really deconditioning to become what I would call healthy, and also to figure out how Western society had become a bit unhealthy. We essentially have systematically separated ourselves from natural landscapes, natural food, and natural everyday interaction with each other. So over the years, my academic training and my health and fitness experience started to overlap a lot. And I had a surprising realization. The steps that it will take to fix the planet and the steps that it will take to fix our health are the same. And there are 5 of them. And here they are. Number 1 is save the good bacteria. The beneficial bacteria in our gut and in soil are critical. In our gut, the beneficial bacteria manage our digestion, and they also regulate most of our immune system activity. In the soil, good bacteria trigger plants to sequester carbon, turn it into sugar, to feed those bacteria, and then the carbon is stored in the soil long term. Now, most of the planet's soils right now are actually carbon depleted, but they already store more carbon than all the trees on Earth and the atmosphere combined. And that's not really widely known, so I'll say it again. The soils on planet Earth store more carbon than all the forests on Earth and the atmosphere combined. So having healthy soil with healthy active bacteria might be the best way to draw down all this carbon and mitigate climate change. Okay, great, but how do we save this good bacteria? Well, pesticides kill the good bacteria in our gut when we eat food with pesticides, and they kill the good bacteria in the soil when we spray pesticides. So it's critical to grow and eat as much organic food as possible. Now some say, well, organic food is for rich people. Well, in the history of planet Earth, every society that's ever lived, up until the 20th century, when we went industrial, they've all eaten 100% organic food because that's all there was. Even today, most of the organic food eaten on Earth is grown and eaten by the world's poorest in small subsistence plots. So growing food at home is actually very important, and we'll get to that more in just 1 minute. Number 2 is don't buy industrially raised meat. Raising meat on the scale that we do on planet Earth is unsustainable. We raise about 70 billion land animals per year. And it's unsustainable for a few specific, clear reasons. Number one, the inputs that go into it, water, fertilizers, pesticides, deforestation, the crops that we use to feed those animals, those are all concentrated into a relatively small yield of edible meat. And that's why when you eat a small piece of meat, it has a huge footprint in all those categories. Number two, eating meat is strongly correlated with the two biggest killers in Western society, heart disease and cancer. Third, social concentration of millions of animals, as opposed to social distancing, is the perfect conditions for pandemics, such as avian flu, swine flu, and others. Superbacteria is also created by the over-administration of antibiotics. So we get bacteria that is resistant to antibiotics, and that is basically a biological time bomb that does threaten humans. Lastly, it's basically beneath us as a human culture to systematically harm our fellow intelligent, sentient beings. Because at best, these animals have a poor experience in this model, and at worst, it's tantamount to torture. There are some gruesome realities woven into this business model. So we need a new model. We need a new model. So what do? Well, we could all go vegan, right? Millions of us have, and it makes a massive impact, but not everyone's ready to make a change on that scale. We do need to eat much less meat in order to survive and thrive on planet Earth. And the key is really to stop ignoring where our meat comes from and get it from a different source. So what is that source? Small-scale, local farms and ranches that are regenerative, meaning they give back to nature as much as they take. And ideally, we're raising animals and plants together in these situations. So really, we're just going back to how we've had farms for thousands of years before we shifted to this experiment in industrial farming. So, what's good about this is, okay, we're raising less meat because it's smaller scale. The quality of the meat goes up. It is more expensive, but the quality goes up. So there's more omega-3s, it's leaner, there are fewer pathogens. Since it's local, you can ostensibly go to the farm and see if the animals are having a reasonable experience, which I believe is our duty. And last, in ideal conditions, if it's really done right, regeneratively, small scale, many of the environmental negatives are reduced. And one can actually become a positive, which is soil quality has been shown to be increased in these agricultural systems. Be in wilderness. Some say that we allow ourselves to abuse nature because we've become so profoundly separated from it. I mean, human beings are essentially just wild animals that have lived in the wild for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden, 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution happens, and millions of us move to concrete and steel cities, and now we're surrounded by electromagnetic fields and breathing in toxins, kept up all night by electronics. When we get back to wilderness and we let our five senses drink it in, something primal is triggered because we remember, this is where I come from. And when we reestablish that connection, we want to protect it, and we're much less likely to abuse it or neglect it in our casual lifestyle choices. Now, being in nature is also good for our health. It lowers blood pressure, it reduces our stress hormones, it gives our immune system a boost. And if we spend the night in nature, I believe the technical term is camping, a night or two, we can get a pretty effortless reset of our sleep habits and eating habits. Generate your own food and electricity. Now, I admit, this one's a tall order. This is kind of a big one. But I'll explain. The key is to do this collectively. Usually when we think about saving the planet, we think, okay, what can individuals do and what can big governments and big corporations do? And those are very important. But there's a massive amount of activity at the community scale and the small company scale because they're small enough to remain essentially autonomous, but big enough to have a collective impact. Okay, so what's happening? There are thousands of communities in the Western world that are establishing what are called community choice energy programs, where they get to choose the source of their energy, could be renewable or whatever mix they want, and they set the price. And the utility company still handles distribution, so it's not that tough to do. For instance, I'm from California. 20 million Californians, half of California, already belongs to these community choice energy groups, so it's not small scale. What else is happening? Well, communities and small companies are pooling their money to buy renewable energy in bulk to get a better price. It's called a power purchase agreement. Or they're just using that money to buy their own renewable energy installments. Solar arrays, solar microgrids, a wind turbine, a wind farm. This obviously produces cleaner energy, clean air, and cleaner lungs. And also the loan that you get to buy these facilities, the monthly loan payment is offset by the savings in electricity costs because you're generating your own. And then in a few years, you pay off the loan and you just get free electricity for a few decades. It's a pretty good deal. Lastly, there are thousands of urban organic gardens that have sprouted up all around the world. They're helping with food deserts, and they're helping supply higher quality food than you can essentially even get at a market, even though there's plenty of good food in markets. And this is why. If you go to the market and you buy your fruit and veg, let's say it's picked 2 days ago or 5 days ago, and then shipped to the market, and then you buy it, and then you take it home and eat it. The moment a fruit or a vegetable is picked, it starts losing nutritional quality. The vitamin and mineral content goes down. So human beings are really meant to eat food that is grown near to them and picked and eaten the same day. Now, above all that I've said about generating your own food and electricity, the real magic and the real simple thing when we scale this up is that you take hundreds of billions of dollars that we're going to industrial agriculture and that we're going to big energy, and you reinvest that into your local communities and your local small companies. And that financial shift alone is a revolution. And last, it's important to change our heart more than it is to change our mind. Our core beliefs that guide our behaviors in most of our life are hardwired into our subconscious. Our subconscious is driven by feelings and emotions because it was established when we were infants and basically pre-language, pre-verbal. So when you're trying to change a belief or a behavior that you think might be holding you back or might be holding society back collectively, it can be better to focus on how we feel than focus on changing how we think, just throwing more data and statistics. An example, climate change. Does climate change feel a bit overwhelming, maybe a bit scary? So you kind of push it to the side and live your regular life. That's what a lot of us do. Well, how about if we thought of it as a massive opportunity to make sweeping changes that we should have made long ago? Because crises give us the liberty to think and act in revolutionary ways. And those changes that we make, they could help Earth operate even better than it did before in some ways. I wake up every day and think that. And so I want to engage with the issue of climate change. How about health? Do you not want to go to the gym and grunt and sweat and then come home and eat vegetables all day? Is that not enticing to you? Well, how about thinking of it in a different way? How about thinking, I want to explore new ways to move my body that feel great and that set me free. There's a lot of ways to exercise. Or with food. There are thousands of superfoods that we can sample that are delicious and invigorating, and they might just solve one of your small health problems. That's why they're called superfoods. So when we change the framing and change how we feel about a behavior or a belief, it's a very good place to start. When I was on that airplane with the blown engine, I was helpless and there was nothing I could do. Incidentally, I'm a little hurt that nobody asked, how did the airplane flight turn out? But I'll tell you anyway. The pilot was amazing, and he did manage to find a relatively flat stretch of land, and he landed the plane, bumpy, landed the plane, and nobody got hurt. Thank God. It was very scary. And really, we're in a similar situation now of free fall. We're in the middle of a sixth mass extinction, rapid climate change. In terms of our health, this generation of children might be the first in modern history to live shorter lives than their parents. But the difference now, compared to that plane flight, is that we can influence the outcome. The things that we think, say, and do can change the results. And the steps to take are clear. We're in the driver's seat. And it's time to steer our planet and our health toward a new, brighter future. Thank you.